Esports is a field defined by players striving to reach the top. With only a fraction of the elite being broadcasted to the public, there are countless unseen players who spend hours grinding games to perfect their play and practice against the best to master themselves. The requirements necessary and sacrifices needed to achieve mastery introduces lasting practices that affect the outlook of these players trying to excel in this environment. My name is Preston Joker Loera, and I am one of these players. I am a former amateur League of Legends player and have put in 11,000 documented hours into the game, reaching a peak of Grandmaster 600 LP. By using my experience living the life of a player and the experiences of a handful of my friends who were my former teammates, my goal is to enhance resources like Karluhati's esports play and Chris's is Street Fighter or martial art, to expand upon how the lifestyles of players are affected once a player is done playing competitively and moved on to other parts of life. Similar to Karluhati's writing, this video essay will be focused on League of Legends, but the experiences can be applied to many facets of esports. The two ideals I want to focus on that players gain from esports are resilience and refinement. Each of these sections will cover experiences that are associated with the topic, and then we'll explain how these feelings transfer over to other aspects of life. By showcasing these experiences, my hope is to explain that the disciplines learned in esports do in fact transfer over to other factors of life. Even though the path may be untraditional, this rocky path one chooses to go down provides an opportunity for self-growth and refinement, allowing them to be able to combat not just the challenges in games, but the struggles of oneself. Players in League of Legends encounter many of the same obstacles on the way to the top, but to varying degrees. These players all experience the changing rank ladder, game patches, technology available to them, and even the age at which they start playing the game. Karluhati notes a variety of commonalities amongst high-level players, and highlights the necessity for technologies like Ethernet to be able to compete with other elite-level players. But despite the varying degree of these obstacles and the necessity of adaptations to combat them, a resilience can be learned to make these obstacles become far less significant when a player chooses not to dwell on the hand they've been dealt, but instead embrace it and play beyond it. A player's ability to combat the unfairness of esports and League of Legends as a whole will grow much worthier than the player who becomes stuck within the construct of their own mind of the game's unfairness. Although resilience is an important skill, the types of factors you need to be resilient to changes based on the environment that you're in. Solo queue is essentially the wooden dummy for refining gameplay and improving individual performance. This virtual dojo features many uncontrollable factors like tilted teammates, uncommon champion picks, and an overall disrespect for the training environment. These factors are not seen in more organized play and require more grit and ability to discern what is and is not your fault to get the most out of practice. Although, this can result in a variety of negative learned behaviors to cope with the chaos. Karluhati highlights this behavior in regards to psycholudic development, making sense as to how this unstable environment causes players to have toxic responses due to the unstableness of solo queue. He highlights that players that are non-mastery oriented disregard solo queue due to reasons like being in a weaker region or game balance, demonstrating a lack of resilience and denies oneself the opportunity to grow. The mastery-oriented individuals respond to this uncontrollable environment and create success for themselves. By persevering in this environment stacked against you, one is able to find a way through the hardship of life and makes them less prone to being stuck in the environment, but rather become an active force to change their situation. Team play, on the other hand, modifies and adds some challenges of its own. Adjusting the stakes of a game by possibly being streamed to an audience or being played on stage, mistakes become 10 times heavier on the mind when playing in a team environment when compared to solo queue. This creates the need for conflict resolution skills amongst team members and having the ability to adapt to the strengths and weaknesses of your teammates. Being on a variety of teams similar to my friends, this is a major point of contention for teams, and they try to create methods such as having an esports psychologist and dedicated leaders on teams to prevent conflicting calls to combat this. A reason for the need of these methods comes from the habits developed in solo queue. The learned behaviors from the chaotic environment result in a chameleon effect that transfers over a player's solo queue responses to team play. A team's ability to not question what if, but ask what's next is a key habit teams try to develop to be more resilient and adaptable to mistakes. When questioned about what esports brought to my friends, a unanimous response was that all of them vouched for conflict resolution skills and the ability to break down problems into smaller pieces. These were skills that they took with them not only for dealing with arguments, but for other aspects of life as well. Not reminiscing on the problems at hand, but actually addressing them to make change. This allows them to break down improvement into smaller goals, resulting in my friends to become a better artist, a better student, a better coworker, a better teammate, and a better member of a community. Refinement is an idea that goes beyond esports, but is a core ideal one takes on in order to improve. This idea of refinement goes beyond simple improvements that one can make to achieve unworthy victories, but to improve the way you approach situations and idealize the scenarios where the world's best can make something out of that moment, and then strive to surpass even that. Refinement was a huge problem in my esports career, not only because of not resembling the playstyles of idealized marksmen, but also because I was a North American player. My version of an idealized self at the time was a version with me with Asian hands, but a North American mind that could go toe-to-toe with Korean and Chinese players. To work towards this idealized self, I would embody the art of Shiogyo, spending my time playing solo queue, writing notes on what could have been better after games, having sticky notes taped to my monitor for reminders on key concepts, and looking in particular to refine my mechanics during laning and team fights to find aggressive moments. This embodiment went beyond training the hands but the mind as well, spending countless hours VOD reviewing, the act of watching pre-recorded games from a god or player POV. I would watch players like Ruler and Gumayushi to understand the thought processes of why they were choosing certain decisions over others. I would then apply these thought processes to my own gameplay, and drive myself to be like them and become that idealized version of myself with every single game that I played. Although this refinement is a worthy way to be able to improve upon oneself, this idea was infected by the environment of solo queue and team play. As players ascend the ranked ladder and the proportion of players becomes smaller, these players form social circles and create echo chambers to band against other players, and find reasons as to why these players are not the best, or took an easier route to the top. I have encountered these groups firsthand, and I especially felt it when I won matches and felt real progress in my gameplay. I developed a fear of patting myself on the back for an unworthy victory and was paranoid of a player that could expose my flaws. This fear was big enough that my achievements at the time were never enough, despite evolving myself and my play style, resulting in me becoming more jaded as I tried to reach the top and eventually had to get away from it all in order to recover. While I can look back on the lessons I learned and move on with the ideals of what refinement should be, I still have to spend time preparing myself for these types of groups, which are a part of many crafts. Art, writing, music, and programming, and so many other fields have this type of muck to it once you take off the rose-tinted glasses. But, as I've grown older and wiser, the thoughts of refinement to achieve something are not the ideals one should go after, but the thought of refining itself. Realizing that there's more than one way to become the best, and if it does not involve the world stage, let the act of enjoying the craft be the best. Despite the hardships I encountered while playing in esports, at the end of the day, I became better because of it and learned more about myself along the way. The time I spent playing and the skills I learned are things that I cherish and have applied to many aspects of my life. Using these skills to become a better programmer, game designer, friend, student, and even writer, I speak for many players who have played in esports that the lessons learned do in fact apply once a player is done competing, and is a lifestyle one takes on to embrace resilience and refinement. While I don't have as much time for League of Legends now and apply the skills I learned to other aspects of life, I do still come back to the game and try my hand at getting better, reminiscing about the lessons learned while playing competitively and play the game with an ecstasy knowing that there's no strings attached. And maybe there's some kind of beauty in that.